Hi everyone, my name's Matt, and when building a super cheap gaming PC for say $200, the most common route a majority of people go is buy an old office computer, throw in a graphics card, a new power supply, and other parts to turn it into a gaming PC. This works well, but what if you wanted something more custom? Could you still build a $200 gaming PC if you buy all the parts individually? Well, that's what I decided to try and find out. So I challenged myself to put together a $200 custom gaming PC. And while the end result isn't perfect, I'm pretty happy with how it turned out, and I'm excited to share it with you. Also, just as a teaser, here's me playing and streaming Cyberpunk on this PC to Twitch at nearly 60 FPS. And if you're building a budget PC like this one, you're probably also going to want to find deals on games, which is super easy to do with the sponsor of today's video, Green Man Gaming, and their Black Friday sale that starts today, offering record low prices on a ton of PC games. Unlike many of the key reseller sites, Green Man Gaming is an official games retailer that works directly with publishers to bring you the best games at the best prices. There are over 5,000 discounts available in the Black Friday sale, including top titles from publishers like Capcom, Bungie, Square Enix, and more. I'm personally going to be picking up Lies of P as it's going to be 40% off, which is the first time I've seen it go on such a steep discount. Other top deals include the Resident Evil 4 remake for over 50% off, Dredge for 49% off, and V Rising for 41% off. This sale starts today and goes until December 3rd, and to check out all these awesome deals, make sure to head to the link in the description, as Green Man Gaming's Black Friday sale is sure to have something for everyone. Thanks again to GMG for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to your regularly scheduled content. So when starting things off for this build, I decided to look for a motherboard first, as this can often be the hardest thing to find for a reasonable price. For example, first gen Ryzen CPUs are pretty cheap, but compatible motherboards are usually twice the price of the CPU itself. After doing some hunting around, I found this board here that looked like it would be a really good option for this build. This is a motherboard pulled from a Lenovo ThinkStation P310. It has 4 DIMM slots, plenty of PCIe expansion, and decent back panel I/O. And while it wouldn't be the easiest thing to work with, it did have one giant upside. This board is not only compatible with Skylake CPUs like the i7-6700, but is also compatible with E3 Xeons from this era. See, while the i7-6700 sells for around $45 right now on eBay, this Xeon E3 1240v5 was able to be found for only $12 with free shipping. The CPU is essentially exactly the same as the i7, but doesn't have integrated graphics and costs 1/3 of the price. Meaning I was able to snag a CPU and motherboard for the system for only $31 total. Now I did need to pick up a power supply adapter for around $4 that would take a standard 24-pin motherboard cable and convert it to the proprietary 10-pin on this Lenovo motherboard. Also, spec-wise, this E3 Xeon features 4 cores with 8 threads and the ability to turbo up to a respectable 3.9 GHz. Now keep in mind this is a CPU from 2015, but should still give plenty of power for esports games and even a lot of AAA titles. Moving on to the cooler, I ended up getting a generic tower style cooler off of AliExpress for around $9 with free shipping. This offers 2 copper heat pipes, a small aluminum fin array, and an LED fan that just displays static colors. This probably wasn't the best option, which I'll explain why later, but it did get the job done and looks halfway decent. For memory, the system needs DDR4, which thankfully has gotten a fair bit cheaper over the last year or so. After looking around for a bit, I found a 2x8GB kit of ADATA Premier DDR4 RAM rated for 2666 MHz. 16GB is plenty for budget gaming. We are starting to see some of the latest and greatest titles favor 32GB. With that being said, this system really isn't designed for those types of games. Also, RAM speed doesn't really matter for this system, as these older Intel CPUs don't benefit that much from fast RAM, and this motherboard doesn't give the option to enable XMP profiles. In terms of storage, this is the area where I had to compromise a fair bit. After looking at my options, I ended up grabbing a 256GB A55 SATA SSD off of eBay for only $15. This is a very basic SATA SSD, and 256GB isn't a ton of space, but it should be enough for the OS and a few games. With that being said, if I had $10 more in the budget, I would definitely go for a 512GB SSD instead, as that's going to give you a much better jumping off point storage wise. For the graphics card, I did a ton of looking around and weighed a bunch of options, but ended up going back to a card that just won't seem to die, which is the AMD RX 480. I snagged this XFX model from eBay for around $44 with free shipping. This isn't an amazing deal or anything, but it is the 8GB model, meaning it should stand up pretty well to modern titles compared to the 4GB one. Also, this card has the cool party trick of being able to easily switch out the fans, which I think is pretty neat. The RX 480 came out over 8 years ago, but still handles a ton of games really well, which you'll be able to see in the benchmark section of this video. Moving on to the power supply, a month or so ago I snagged two EVGA 450BRs from eBay for $60 total or $30 a piece. I used one in a previous budget build and I'm using the other in this one. 450 watts is plenty of power for this system, and this unit having a bronze rating is nice to have. Also, this power supply is non-modular but features nice all black sleeve cables, and all the excess cables are easily hidden away in the basement of the case. Speaking of the case, I ended up grabbing a fish tank style PC case off of AliExpress for only $33 with free shipping. The only problem is it took 6 weeks to get to me, which is definitely longer than the 2-day shipping I've gotten used to when ordering from places like Amazon. With that being said, this case was packed really well, and pulling it out I was pretty darn impressed with how it looked and felt. It doesn't have the thickest steel panels or anything, but for $33 I think it's a great deal. One caveat with this case is the fact it comes with no fans, so I grabbed a 3-pack of LED fans off of Amazon for only $10. These are the static fake RGB ones, but you can also grab all black ones for the same price. Also, I used a $3 fan splitter to make cable managing the fans easier, even though there are enough fan ports on the motherboard. So with all the parts in hand, it was time to put everything together, which was definitely a journey as this was far from a straightforward build. So first things first, I got out my motherboard and installed the CPU, which went fine. Where I started to run into trouble was installing the cooler. I popped out the default backplate the board came with and went to install the mounting bracket for the new cooler. The only problem is, while the hole spacing is correct in this board, the holes themselves are ever so slightly larger than the standard ones, meaning this bracket and other coolers like the Intel stock cooler would just slip out if you tried to mount them normally. So I had to get a little creative. What I ended up doing was using a couple zip ties to mount the round bracket to the motherboard itself, then I could apply thermal paste and install the cooler normally with the clips. The next bit of building was pretty straightforward with just installing the motherboard into the case, and no, I didn't forget the IO shield. This board just didn't come with one, which was unfortunate. The next place I ran into a roadblock was the front panel cables. Basically, the only front IO in this build that works is the power button and LED. All the other connectors either aren't on the board in the case of the USB 3 or are proprietary in the case of USB 2 and the front panel audio. This is definitely a disappointment, but kind of comes with the territory when building a PC this cheap. But after that, everything else went in fine, and I was happy to see the system boot right up on the first try. So with everything installed and working, it was time to test out some games. I started things off easy with the esports title Valorant and test this game at 1080p low and by hopping into a deathmatch. Now, I'm absolutely trash at this game, but thankfully that's not because of the performance, as the system was able to output a respectable 198 FPS average with 1% lows of 105. This felt pretty darn smooth in my opinion and should be more than enough for casual and even light competitive play. Moving on to another esports title, Fortnite, I test this game at 1080p in performance mode with what I would consider medium settings and by hopping into a Team Rumbles match. Doing this resulted in a solid 135 FPS average with bad 1% lows of 15. With this being said, it really didn't feel super stuttery even with the awful 1% lows, and this should be enough performance for casual play. Next up is Apex Legends, which I tested at 1080p with a mix of medium and low settings and by hopping into a deathmatch. Doing this resulted in a 125 FPS average with 1% lows of 90, which both looked and felt pretty darn good. I haven't been testing Apex much recently, but I'm pretty impressed with how well optimized it seems to currently be, especially compared to something like Fortnite. Now let's crank the difficulty up a bit by testing some AAA titles, starting with an older one in the form of Borderlands 3. I test this game at 1080p medium settings and by using the built-in benchmark. Doing this resulted in a respectable 72 FPS average with 1% lows of 54. This shows that the system is definitely capable of playing older AAA titles at 60 plus FPS. Next up is Elden Ring, which I tested at 1080p low settings and by going to a relatively intensive area and just finding some mobs to fight. Doing this resulted in a decent 54 FPS average with 1% lows of 33. There definitely was some stuttering, but it wasn't awful. I personally would want more performance when playing a game like this, but I think a lot of people would consider this adequate. Moving on to Cyberpunk, which I tested at 1080p, low preset, and by using the built-in benchmark, this resulted in a 64 FPS average with 1% lows of 48. This was awesome in my opinion, and it was great to see that hopping in-game and driving around, I was basically seeing identical performance to what I got in the benchmark. Finally, for the heck of it, I decided to test a very intensive game in the form of Black Myth Wukong by running this game at 1080p low settings with 100% resolution scaling and using the free benchmarking tool. Doing this resulted in a not so great 34 FPS average with 1% lows of 29, which shows that this system really isn't meant for the latest and greatest AAA titles. After testing regular gaming, I decided to try and test streaming also. I did this by streaming Valorant and Cyberpunk to Twitch at what OBS recommended settings wise, which was an output of 720p at 60 FPS. Starting off with Valorant, I was happy to see there was basically zero performance hit while streaming. I again tested at 1080p low in a deathmatch, and honestly this felt exactly the same as when I wasn't streaming, which shows you that nowadays you really don't need a crazy powerful system to stream. Moving on to Cyberpunk, there was a performance hit, but the average FPS was still at nearly 60, which was great to see, and it's honestly just kind of mind-blowing this game can not just run, but also be streamed on this system. With that being said, temps were getting out of hand. In terms of temps, I'm not going to sugarcoat it, they weren't great. There were instances where both the CPU and GPU were getting into the upper 80s, with even seeing flashes into the 90s on the CPU when streaming Cyberpunk. I think that changing the thermal paste on the GPU could help, and having a more normally mounted cooler might help also, but I think the case airflow is what messed me up. I put all the fans as exhaust, which probably wasn't a great idea, and I'm wondering now if messing around with having one or two of them as intake would have helped at all. So now let's talk about this build as a whole. I think for $200 and not using any crazy deals, this system performs pretty darn good. With that being said, it's definitely hard to recommend, mostly because of the motherboard, which requires a power supply adapter, has non-standard cooler holes, and has proprietary front panel connectors, which is a big bummer. If I could do this over again, or if you were wanting to build something like this, I would probably just recommend going for one of those AliExpress CPU motherboard combos, as they offer very solid value, and the motherboards use all standard connectors. I would also pick a different case, as this one took forever to ship, but didn't have great airflow, and after buying fans was over $40, which you can grab cases on Amazon and Newegg for around $45 easily. With that being said, I'm interested to hear what you guys think of this build, so let me know in the comments below what you think and what you would have done differently. Also, thanks again to Greenman Gaming for sponsoring this video. Make sure to check out their Black Friday sale linked in the description. So yeah guys, I think it's time to wrap this video up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And as always, this is Matt from Tech by Matt, signing out.